I have been a trauma surgeon for 22 years, and I have never been more certain of anything than I was that Thursday evening, when I told her to step back. His name doesn't matter. What matters is that he was a retired general, 71 years old, and he was dying on my table. We had his chart, we had his history, we had 2 attendings, and a third-year resident, and a full trauma team. And, for 11 minutes, we had been losing him in slow, unstoppable increments, and none of us could find the reason. His pressure kept dropping, his rhythm kept slipping. He wasn't responding to what we were giving him, and the monitor above his head was telling us, in its flat and patient tone, that we were running out of time. She was standing at the wall. That was where I'd put her. Not intentionally cruel, just practical. The way surgeons get practical when the room is crowded and the clock is moving. She was the float nurse on our floor, reassigned that afternoon because we were short-staffed, thin, young, dark-haired, quiet. She had introduced herself when she came on, a name I'd already forgotten, and I had nodded and handed her the supply checklist and told her we might need her for monitoring. That was the role I'd assigned her in my mind. Supply runner, monitor watcher, someone to hand things to. I had not asked where she'd worked before. I had not asked what she knew. I had a general dying in front of me, and she was not part of my calculus. She had been watching us for 4 minutes when she spoke. His trachea, she said. Look at the trachea. I didn't look up. Managing the airway. It's deviated, she said. Left side. His neck veins are distended. He's not moving air on the right. I looked up then, not at the general, at her. She was still standing at the wall. She hadn't moved. Her arms were at her sides and her voice was level and quiet. The way you talk, when you are not asking permission, when you are simply reporting what you see. We ruled out pneumothorax, my resident said without looking up. Not tension, she said. And look at his pressure curve. That's not just the pneumo. There's something compressing from the pericardial side too. He's got both. The room went quiet in that particular way. Not the silence of agreement. The silence of people trying to decide whether to be annoyed or frightened. I was leaning toward annoyed. Tension pneumothorax combined with cardiac tamponade is a rare combination. Diagnosing it with a glance from the wall was not, in my experience. Float nurses operated. Step back, I said, let us work. She didn't argue. She took 1 step back, literally, just enough to comply with the instruction, and she kept her eyes on the monitor. 40 seconds later, his pressure bottomed. The tone on the monitor changed character, and I felt the air go out of the room the way it does when a surgeon realizes the ground has shifted under him. I had my hands on his chest, and I could feel what she was describing, and I could not explain why I hadn't seen it 60 seconds earlier. Tracheal deviation was there. The neck veins were there. The right lung was silent. She's right, my resident said. It cost him something to say it. I turned. She was already at the cart. Needles ready, she said. She held it out to me. Not pushing. Not performing. Just the needle in her hand, positioned correctly, at the angle you use for field decompression when a patient is on their back and you have seconds to act. It was the angle a trauma surgeon knows. It was also the angle a combat medic knows. It is not, in my experience, the angle a floor nurse thinks of first. I took the needle. We decompressed the tension side. His saturation began climbing before I'd even confirmed placement. Then we addressed the tamponade, pericardiocentesis with what was on the cart, hands passing me the correct syringe before I asked for it, her eyes on the ultrasound reading aloud what she saw there. Quiet, precise, no wasted words. She called every change in his pressure in real time, kept her voice flat and useful, and never once looked at me as though she was waiting for praise. He stabilized in 6 minutes. Full return, pressure holding, rhythm clean. Nobody talked for a moment. The monitor hummed. My resident was staring at the general's chest, rising and falling steadily, as if he needed physical proof of what had just happened. I was staring at my own hands. There was something wrong with the way the room felt. Not wrong, exactly, but tilted. The way a room tilts when the thing you were certain of turns out not to be true. I looked at her. She was documenting at the wall station, writing her notes in the same unhurried hand she'd used to hold the needle. A small silver pin was clipped to the edge of her badge holder, barely visible under the lanyard, half the size of a thumbnail. I noticed it the way you notice something small when the larger picture has just come loose. A pair of wings, military style. The kind you see on Navy aeromedical crews. I didn't ask her about it that night. I should have. She left after her shift ended, 2 hours later. Signed her chart notes, stocked the cart, clocked out. No fanfare, no sideways glance at the people in the room who had told her to step back. She walked down the corridor toward the elevator with her coat over her arm. And the general was alive in the next room. And nobody in the hall knew that the two facts were connected. I found out the rest 40 minutes after that. A man came to the nurse's station, trim, composed in his 60s, the kind of posture that does not come from a gym. He was wearing a service dress uniform, navy, and behind him, ranged in the corridor in two loose groups, were 6 more men in the same dress. Some were his age, one was younger. They carried themselves the way men carry themselves when they have agreed, among themselves, that this moment matters, and they intend to handle it correctly. He asked for the nurse. The charge nurse didn't understand the question at first. Which nurse? And he described her. Height, hair, the silver pin on her badge. He used the words aeromedical crew, and he used the words 3 deployments, and he used a call sign, Clearwater, the way you use a name you have, not said aloud in years but have not once forgotten. The charge nurse told him she'd gone home. He nodded once. He asked for her name on the schedule. He said they would come back in the morning. Then he turned to me. I was standing 6 feet away, still in my scrubs, still trying to organize what the last 2 hours had added up to. And he said, with no more ceremony than if he were giving me a weather report, the nurse who helped your patient tonight, we flew 3 deployments with her, Persian Gulf, Kandahar, one more that isn't on any open record. He paused. She held a triage position alone for 6 hours after our physician went down. No backup, 8 casualties. She kept every one of them alive. He looked at me steadily. Every one. I didn't say anything. We heard she was here, he said. We wanted to make sure she knew we remember. In the morning, she came back for her shift, and they were waiting in the corridor outside the elevator, 7 of them, in dress uniforms, standing without impatience, the way men wait when they are certain the thing they are waiting for is worth the wait. She came around the corner with her badge already clipped, and her scrubs clean, and her face carrying exactly the same expression it had carried the night before, attentive, calm, undemanding. She saw them. She stopped walking. The man in front, the one who had spoken to me the night before, came to attention, slowly, deliberately, with the particular weight that a salute carries when it is not a formality but a debt. The 6 men behind him came to attention in the same moment, not ragged, not hurried, together, the way men move together when they have practiced the same things in the same hard places. She did not speak. She stood with her coat still over her arm, and she looked at them, and something moved behind her eyes. Not surprise, not relief, something quieter than either of those. Recognition, maybe. The kind that goes both ways. The charge nurse from the previous night was at the station, and she didn't say a word. My resident was at the end of the corridor, and he went very still. I was leaning in the doorway of the supply room, and I watched the whole thing, and I am telling you now that I have stood in trauma bays with dying men, and I have never felt the air in a corridor carry as much weight as it carried. In that moment, the lead man lowered his salute. He stepped forward and he said not loudly, Clearwater, 8 for 8. We wanted you to know we still count. She looked at him for a long moment, then she said quietly, so do I, that was all. She put her badge on, and she walked to her station, and she pulled her first chart, and she went to work. The 7 men turned and walked back to the elevator, unhurried, as if they had come a long way to say a true thing and the thing had been said and that was sufficient. I went back to my rounds. The general was asking for breakfast. His numbers were clean. I found out later that she had served under 3 different flight surgeons across those 3 deployments, and that all 3 of them had filed commendations for her that went into a classification level I don't have access to. I found out that the 6 hours she held that triage position, alone, in a collapsed forward aid station, 8 men who should not have survived, was the kind of event that gets a paragraph in a debrief and a footnote in a record and almost no one talks about afterward. Because the people who were there are not inclined to talk about it, and the people who weren't there don't have the language. Think about Thursday night, sometimes. I think about the 11 minutes we spent losing a man, while she stood at the wall and waited for us to see what she already knew. I think about the needle in her hand at the correct angle. I think about the way she wrote her chart notes after, unhurried, as though saving a man's life was simply the job and the job was worth doing carefully. I never told her to step back again. Some things, once you've seen them, you cannot unsee. That's not a comfort exactly, but it is the truth, and it is the only way I know how to end this. She kept 8 men alive in a collapsed forward aid station with no physician and no backup. And then she came home and put on a different set of scrubs. And she was standing at my wall when it mattered, and I told her to step back. 7 men in dress uniforms drove 3 hours to make sure she knew they remembered. I am glad someone did.